Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So we will be continuing with our economy discussions, and in this session we will be starting with a new module, that is inflation. Okay, so this is our new module. So far we have completed around 10 modules, so this is the 11th I think. So we are starting with inflation. So what is inflation? It is actually the persistent increase in the average prices, right? The price levels in an economy, right? So it refers to persistent increase in general price level. So I told you what I mean by price level. It means average prices, because here we are talking about macroeconomic concepts. When we discussed about microeconomics, we are just taking price. Here we are going to take average prices, so price levels. So when we draw the diagram graph, you will see on the y-axis we will go for price level, on the x-axis we will go for national income. I'll show you now. Okay, so persistent increase, that means over a period of time. Today 10 rupee, tomorrow 11 rupee, we can't say for item as inflation. Okay, it's over a period of time. Price level means average, right? So certain commodities together are collectively are taken, so average price level. It's a macroeconomic concept, it's not a microeconomic concept. So there's a macroeconomic concept. So one more definition, it refers to increase in average prices of goods and services, or the price level of goods and services in an economy over a period of time. Same. Now, inflation can also be understood as a situation where too much of money chasing too few goods. Okay, so let's suppose, for example, I have discussed deficit financing in one of our previous session. Like, let's suppose 1,000 rupees there with the public, total only 1,000 rupees there in the economy, and 100 goods are there. So this 1,000 rupees now chasing 100 goods, right? So the cost of one good will be rupee 10. Now let's suppose more money is there through deficit financing. So what will happen? Let's say 400 rupees printed by RBI and circulated by the government. So 14 rupees now in the market, but the goods remain the same. So this 1400 is now chasing 100. So the one good will cost 14. So this is inflation. So what is the problem with deficit financing? That lead to inflation, because more money is chasing few goods. Okay, so inflation can also be understood as a situation where too much of money is chasing too few goods. Or you can also say it actually reduces the real value of money. It reduces the purchasing power also. Let's suppose your salary remain 1,000, okay, and it remain 1,000 this month and next month, and it remain 1,000, but inflation is there, means you cannot buy as much as goods that you bought in the previous month. That means your purchasing power has come down, or the real value of money will come down. So all these are definitions for inflation. You can take it in any way. Now we will quickly discuss about the types of inflation. So types of inflation. There are two types: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. We will be talking about demand pull inflation first, because that is more important from monetary policy point of view. Just now we have covered the monetary policy, so I am first discussing that, and then we will discuss cost push inflation, that is related to the supply side, that also we will discuss in the session. Okay, so demand pull inflation. Now this name itself will tell you what inflation is this, right? Demand. It is caused because of demand. So excess demand in the market result into this inflation. Now what is the reason for demand? So when I'm talking about demand, I'm talking about aggregate demand, because this is a macroeconomic concept. So when this aggregate demand increase, it increases when there is a increase in money supply. Okay. Now how to control this inflation? Demand pull inflation. The reason for demand pull inflation is the demand. The demand is because of purchasing power. Purchasing power is because of money supply. So how to control this? Reduce the money supply to tackle this inflation. So what will happen? Aggregate demand will come down. So you can check this inflation. This we have already discussed. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Now, if you see what are the reasons for demand pull inflation, unlimited reasons are there. Okay, so what you need to do, you cannot read a textbook and you cannot remember that these are the reasons. So what you need to do, demand pull inflation means you just need to see whether the given reason will result or create demand, or whether the given reason will touch the root cause. What is the root cause? Money supply. Whether the given reason will increase money supply or not. If the given reason increase money supply, that will result into demand, that will result into this inflation. For example, money supply, that is most important reason, right? Money supply increasing, demand will increase. What you need to see, what all things will increase the demand? Major causes money supply. So now everything I'm going to connect with money supply. The if you get questions like this, which among the following is the reason for demand pull inflation? In the options, what you need to see, which of the option result into more money supply. So money supply is done. Then what about another example? If I give you increase in forex. Increase in forex. So increase in forex, is it a reason for demand pull inflation? Yes. How? Because when forex is coming, equivalent amount of rupee has to be pumped in the market, right? So that lead to increase in money supply. So increase in forex automatically means what? Money supply in the economy will increase. Money supply increase means aggregate demand will increase. That lead to demand pull inflation. So increase in forex is one of the reason for demand pull inflation. Now, I'll show it in the graph. What is this inflation? I told you it's a macroeconomic concept. So in the x-axis we'll go for national income, and in the y-axis we go for price level. Okay, so let's say this is the supply, aggregate supply, and this is the aggregate demand. Demand curve is downward sloping, supply curve is upward sloping. You know the reasons. So this is the current position. Now let's say money supply is increasing. Money supply is increasing means what will happen with the demand? Demand will increase. Demand will increase means demand curve shift rightward like this. So what is the new position now? Equilibrium. This is a new position. So you can see there is an increase in price. There is an increase in price. So this is what you call as inflation. But there is a positive here. The positive here you can see in the x-axis that there is an increase in national income. So growth also increased. Okay. So that's what you can understand from demand pull inflation. Now the reasons, actually there is no point in teaching reasons. What I need to do, I have already done. What is the demand pull inflation? I've told you. And what is the reason, the root cause of demand pull inflation? I've told you, money supply increase. Now anything and everything which you see or which you feel that increased money supply is the reason for demand pull inflation. So never, try to memorize any reasons here. For example, I give you another reason, deficit financing. Deficit financing. Okay, already I've told you this point. Deficit financing means what? You are printing more money, you are printing currency. That means more money supply will be there. That lead to increase in demand. That leads to demand pull inflation. So deficit financing, what do you need to check? Whether it is a reason for demand pull inflation or not. Whether it increased money supply or not. Yes, it increased money supply. So reason. Next, reduction on direct taxes. Decrease direct taxes. Now what will happen with direct taxes? What you need to do here, you need to check whether it will increase money supply or not. When direct taxes are increased, what will happen? You need to pay less tax out of the income that you received. So your disposable income will be more, right? YD will be out of the total income, you need to pay certain amount of tax. If that is reduced, disposable income will be more. Disposable income will be more means what? Purchasing power will be more. That means money supply is actually more. More money with the people. So this is also reason for, demand pull inflation. Less taxes, more demand or more money supply. Increase in population, obviously it will result into demand. So demand, one of the reason is demand, right? Increase in population is always going to create demand. One of the most important reason for demands in developing countries are the population. In developing countries, demand will never end because of population. What about increase in black money? Fake currency, etc. Black money, fake currency, all these will increase money supply in the market or economy. So that also result into, high demand, and that lead to demand pull inflation. So all these are the reasons. So what you need to do, you can't remember. I can give you a lot of another reasons also. For example, increase of government public expenditure. Increase in government or public expenditure. So what will happen when the expenditure of government is increasing? What does that mean? It means the money supply is increasing, right? So money supply is increasing. So this is also one of the reason. Similarly, increase in budgetary deficit. Okay, that I'll discuss detail in the chapter of budget. Increase in next module is actually that one only, budgetary deficit. So that means effectively you are pumping more money, you are spending more. That is the reason why deficit, right? So spending more means money supply in the economy will increase. That is also reason for demand pull inflation. Now what about this very interesting one? Increase in exports. Increase in exports. So as I've told you already, increase in exports, you need to check whether this will increase in money supply or not. Now how will you check? You see, increase in exports. When you export, you are giving something, so you'll receive the payment for that. You'll receive the payment in terms of dollar, and this is forex. So when you're exporting, what will happen? Forex will increase. Forex increase means I've already told you here. you can see here forex increase means what? Now this is connected, no? When export increase, this will come into force. When forex increasing, automatically that much amount of currency is either printed and circulated, or RBI will give that money, that much money. Rupee will be circulated in the market, so money supply will increase, so purchasing power will increase, so the demand pull inflation will be there. So increase in forex is also a reason. But you can't remember all this, right? So what you need to do, whether increase in exports have any implication on money supply. Will that increase money supply or not? Yes, so that is a reason. Similarly, decrease in imports. Decrease in import. I would say increase in exports and decrease in imports. Now imports decreased. What will happen? See, let's take the opposite. Imports increased. Import increase means you are importing, so you have to pay back. So when you are paying back, money from here is going. Money is going. So money supply in the market will reduce. So increasing imports is not the reason. You understood? Increasing imports means you have to pay for it. Decrease in imports means that, when you are importing, that money that you need to pay, now you are not paying anymore. So that remain in the market. So money supply will increase. Okay. So that lead to inflation. So increase in exports and decrease in imports are the reasons. Now, what about depreciation of currency? Depreciation of rupee. Depreciation of rupee. Now, what you need to see here is, what is the impact of depreciation of rupee? When rupee depreciate, what will happen with export and import? That is what you need to see. So when rupee depreciate, who will gain? Exporters will gain, because the payments are in terms of dollar. So when you receive dollar, earlier for an export, let's say you are receiving $1, let's say 60 rupee. Now if it is 74 because of depreciation, now you are getting $1, 74 rupee. So you are gaining more. Okay, so that promotes exports. So what will happen during depreciation of rupee? More exports will be there. Opposite will happen with the case of imports. What will happen? Now you need to pay more to import, because the payment is done in terms of dollar. So imports will reduce. So export increase, import reduce. Already we discussed this reason. Export increase, import reduce. That is a reason for. That is also a reason for increase in money supply. So rupee depreciate means money supply will increase. Or rather, money supply increase is also one of the reasons for rupee depreciation that we have discussed already. Because money supply is increasing means demand for dollar will be more, so rupee depreciate. All these are connected. So these are the reasons. Okay. So I hope this is clear for all of you. Now let's go for cost push inflation. See, it is because of, reduction in supply. But first one was increase in demand, here reduction in supply. How supply will reduce? Because cost of production is more or not. So what you need to check, whether supply is decreased or not. Now how to check supply is decreased or not? Cost of production is increasing or not. Earlier you were checking money supply is increasing or not. Now what you need to check, cost of production is increasing or not. If cost of production is increasing, that lead to supply side inflation. That means cost push inflation. If money supply is increasing, demand pull inflation. Okay, you need to make a differentiation between those two. Supply side constraint, cost push. That means cost of production is increasing, cost push. Money supply increasing, demand pull. Okay, so now if you look into the see what are the how can I show this in diagram? This side you go for national income, so here you will go for price level, y-axis. Okay, so let's say aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So this is your equilibrium position. Now here cost of production, supply reduce. Supply reduce means what will happen with the supply curve? Shift leftward. So supply curve shift leftward. You can see here there is an increase in price. You can see here clearly. So this is what the inflation. Before also you have seen that, right? Here also we have discussed that. Here also there is an increase in price because of demand. Here because of less supply. But the advantage in the previous case was national income was increasing. Here there is a positive. Now you see here national income was decreasing. So this inflation is never desirable. Even though demand pull inflation is desirable, although inflation is there, growth was also there. But when it comes to cost push inflation, inflation is there, growth also is not there, growth is reduced. So this is the worst inflation. Okay, so cost push inflation is the worst inflation, it's a problematic one. So I hope you understood this. This diagram itself is enough to make you understand things, but let me go for the reasons. So again, reasons you can't remember. I can give you 10-15 reasons. You can't remember or you can't memorize. What you need to do, whether the given reason will affect the supply. Just like in the case of demand pull inflation, whether the given reason affect demand, Demand means money supply. Here, whether the given reason affects supply. Supply means cost of production. So the check here is whether it is affecting the cost of production. So first one, the reason is increase in cost of production. So increase in inputs, increase in prices of inputs. So increase in prices of inputs will result into increase in cost of production. What are the different inputs, the factor inputs that we have discussed? Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, right? So land means you have to pay rent. So if rent increases, cost of production increase, so supply will come down. Labor, you have to pay wages. So if wages increase, that also affect cost of production. Capital, that is the interest. If interest increase, then also cost of production will be more. Entrepreneurship, that is profit. So if you take more profit, still cost of production is more. So any of this increase means cost of production will be more. So supply will come down. That lead to supply side inflation or cost push inflation. So increase in price of inputs. One more point, increase in indirect taxes. So if you remember, when it comes to demand pull inflation, decrease in direct taxes was reason why, more disposable income. Now increase in indirect taxes, what will happen? Here increase, opposite. You just check whether the cost of production increase or not. Yes. What will happen? If more taxes you need to pay, this will result into less supply. So supply will reduce. Okay. So increase in indirect tax is one of the reason. What about decrease in subsidies? Decrease in subsidies means the cost will be more. When the cost will be more means supply will be less. Okay, so decrease in subsidy means cost increase, so supply will decrease. That is also reason. Then you can attribute natural factors here, labor factors here, all these things, reduction in supply of raw materials here, all this can be a reason. Hoarding and speculation, hoarding and speculation, yes, that is also a reason. Okay, because that reduces supply. We are looking for reduction in supply or not. Defective supply chain, yes, these are direct. Defective supply chain. Increase in prices of imported commodities, yes. Increase in prices of imported commodities like petrol and diesel, etc. Okay, what will happen? Increase in price of imported commodities, their price will increase, automatically the associated prices will also increase, because cost of production is linked with that, right? Cost of production increase, supply will reduce. What about depreciation of currency? Depreciation of rupee. Now see, depreciation of rupee we have already seen from demand side. Here we need to see from supply side. Depreciation of rupee means for imports now you need to pay more. So what will happen? This increase in price of imported commodities. So already we have discussed, this is connected with this. Earlier depreciation of rupee means more export and less import, that lead to more money supply. Here depreciation of rupee means less import, that is the reason for supply side inflation. Less import means imports are costlier. Rather than saying less imports, these are inelastic items, so we need to anyway buy this petrol, diesel, etc. So you have no choices, so more price you need to pay, so cost of production will be high, supply will be less. Increase in exports. Earlier also increase in exports, here also increase in exports. Earlier increase in exports lead to money supply, that lead to demand. Here increase in export, you need to connect it with supply. So what will happen? Increase in exports. What will happen with supply? Domestic supply will come down. So supply is less. So the cost push inflation will be there. Import less. You can connect actually with these two. Import less means now you are importing less, so domestic supply will be reduced. Okay, so if you are importing means more supply will be there, so supply will be less, so cost push inflation. So all these are the reasons. Or you can also say increase in net exports. Increase in net exports. Net exports means what? X minus M, export minus import. If this is increasing, what does that mean? More is going out, that means supply will be less. So increase in net export is also a reason. Okay, so what you need to check here, you just need to check whether it will affect cost of production or reduction in supply. Just like in the demand pull case, you are checking whether it will affect money supply or increase in demand. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Now recent past into the 2010 onwards to 2015, the reason for inflation was actually the price of crude oil. The imported commodities are costlier. So increase in prices of crude oil, because government can't control this. That is one of the most important reason. Also depreciation of rupee. Depreciation of rupee. See, 2010 it was 46. Now what is it? 74. Okay. So 76 it reached. Now 2010 to 15 time, if you see, there was huge inflation. When we discuss about the trends of inflation, I'll be discussing about this phase. The reason is it is actually the global financial crisis, which was in 2008, and because of that fiscal stimulus was introduced. So fiscal stimulus means tax reduction, tax rates reduced, and government expenditure increased. Both these lead to what? Money supply will increase, purchasing power increase, demand will increase, that lead to inflation, because it is done to promote growth. Fiscal stimulus. So I'll be writing here fiscal stimulus. Okay. Now I'll quickly tell you what is food inflation, why this is the drastic changes there in case of food inflation, because the food items, the food commodities are inelastic from demand side as well as from supply side. From demand side it is inelastic because you can't survive without food. From supply side it is inelastic because it is mostly perishable items, right? So inelastic means you need to go for a steep curve, unlike what we have drawn till now. When you're drawing, you need to go for a steep curve. The more steeper curve you will draw, you will get a better idea. So let's say there's a quantity, there's a price, this is the equilibrium point. Okay, so there's a supply curve, there's a demand curve. Now what will happen with the demand for food? Demand for food is more always. So demand increase more drastically, right? Demand increase more, but what will happen with supply? Supply increase with a small pace. So I cannot make this much change in supply. So supply increase at a small price like this. Very small change will be there in the supply. So now this meet here, you can see the new equilibrium point here. So this is the reason why food inflation. You can see if you draw it more steeper, you will get a higher inflation. Food inflation is always higher. Even though there is a small change in prices, this is actually the reason, because these are inelastic. Okay, but if equal amount of supply is there, like this green line, if you can draw somewhere here, then you see there is no change, because 10% increase in demand, 10% increase in supply, there is no problem. Here what is the problem? Problem is, let's say 10% increase in demand but only 1% increase in supply. Supply changes, or supply is very slow, increasing at slow pace. That is actually the reason for food inflation. So ultimate reason for food inflation is more demand, less supply. What you need to do, you cannot reduce demand for food, rather what you can do is increase the supply. What you can do for that? Supply chain management, all those things is what you need to do. Reasons supply is low. The reasons for low supply is low growth of agriculture, defective supply chain. Now at the same time, demand is high. Why? High demand because of the fiscal stimulus I have told you, and now low interest rate. MG and REGA is also one of the reasons. There is a World Bank study, MG and REGA, World Bank study, that MG and REGA is creating food inflation. The good thing is that it helped in eliminating hunger. Now there are two types of food, that is basic food and protein food. The demand for protein food is nowadays more because of excess money supply with the people. So demand for protein food is more. So the food inflation is actually caused due to this protein food, demand for the protein foods.